Welcome to the first in a series of experimental methods workshops looking at criterion B and C with some specific focus on the e-assessment and how to answer those questions specifically when you're faced with an e-assessment context. So within the experimental methods, what we're really looking at for the MYPE assessment is around about 50% of your examination. Now, this doesn't matter if it is if it is biology, chemistry, physics, or if it's integrated sciences. Each of these are designed in a similar format. We have 25% roughly, with a bit of wiggle room, for criterion A, knowledge and understanding, and you'll have 25% for criterion D, science and society, and the impact of science and society, and then 25 for criterion B, which is your planning, and then criterion C, which is your gathering of data and your interpretation and conclusion, and also evaluating whether your experiment was actually a good one or not. So we begin with a purpose, something that you're wondering about, something that you're curious about, something that might affect your business, something that might affect the planet. So there's something that we want to find out about. And so from here, we design our research question. Our research question is very much phrased around how. How does something affect something else? How does our independent variable, the thing that we are going to change, affect our dependent variable, the thing that we are going to record, the thing that we are going to measure? How does our independent variable, the cause, affect the effect? So the research question is bringing these two things together. Very often it's worth 2 marks in the e-assessment, and the highest level research question is one that includes the IV and the DV and also some context. So a lower quality example would be something that is just identifying the IV or the DV. So how does sunlight affect carrots grown? Might be something that is slightly lower quality because it's not clear in its explanation of the IV or the DV. How does the number of hours of sunlight affect the mass of carrots grown? Would be elevating that, because you've got a clear independent variable, the number of hours of sunlight, and a clear dependent variable, the mass of the carrots that are grown. You could elevate that one step further if you wanted to by including in there how does the number of hours of sunlight, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, affect the mass of carrots grown over 20 days? Okay, so what this would do is this would move us even further towards DP level research question than just an MYP research question. Now, following on from that, you'll move on to your hypothesis. So you would go away, you would conduct some research. If you're in the examination, this would either be information that's provided to you on screen, or it would be information that you're bringing in with you. So this is where criterion B and criterion A will overlap. Your hypothesis is a discussion of what you predict will happen. It has to link together the IV and the DV. If you can do that, you would get around about a 3. If you can bring in some science, this will elevate you to around about a 4. If you can bring in clear, correct, and detailed science, then this is how you're moving through the 5 and all the way up to the 8 in this particular bracket. So, for example, if we are talking about the research question that we had here with the carrots, and I appreciate that this is a biological context. So I think that as the number of hours of sunlight increases, then the mass of the carrots will increase. This here is linking together my IV and my DV, but there is no science. Because. So if we change this as to an if the number of hours of sunlight increases, give me an actual direction. Don't say change. So if the number of hours of sunlight increases, then the mass of the carrots will increase because. If then because. If then because. This is how you elevate your answer. If the number of hours of sunlight increases, then the mass of carrots will increase because more light is available to allow photosynthesis to take place for a prolonged period of time. That's how I would get to maybe a 5. To elevate any further than that, I would want an explanation of what photosynthesis is. I would want to look at how glucose is produced in photosynthesis. I would want to look at how glucose is responsible for a mass increase. And then I would want to link that back to my increased number of hours of sunlight. Okay, so research question to summarize. How does the IV affect the DV? Hypothesis. Linking your IV and your DV with an explanation of what you think will happen and why. If the IV increases, then the DV will, because, and try to have a significant amount of science here. Now, one thing that I would suggest is that when you're giving your because, you ask yourself this, which means that. If you ask yourself that 3 times and you write the answer, then you are almost guaranteed to have as much depth as you would need to access the higher part of this part of the criterion. So if we go through it one more time, if the number of hours of sunlight increases, then the mass of carrots increases because there is more photosynthesis, which means that there is more glucose that is produced, okay, which means that there is more starch that is going to be stored, there is more mass that is going to be deposited, which means that the carrots will become bigger. Whether that's wider or longer is irrelevant, the mass is going to increase. So which means that pushes you to think deeper and not just give a superficial answer. So, purpose, research question, and hypothesis.